everyone. I'm very excited to be chatting today with our amazing panelists out here. You've already heard the introduction. I know we have 30 minutes, and I heard we'll be sweating here. So we're all set, but then super excited to be chatting about various things, but starting with, what the hell is small data? Right? We all have been hearing about it since like 8 a.m., 9 a.m., I guess. I've been interviewing folks, I've done almost 9 interviews. I've chatted with enterprise leaders, vendors, community folks, kind of excited about what the hell is data. Do you want to pick it up, Josh?
No, I have no desire to. I want to disagree with whatever the first person says, basically, as much as possible to make it a good, interesting panel. That's kind of my aim. So ask someone else, and then I'll disagree with them.
So I think I'll go with Jake.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Josh disagrees with everything I say anyway, so this is perfect.
This is perfect.
Oh man, could go a lot of different directions with this, but what is it? What is small data? I mean, I'm trying to not regurgitate everything everyone else said, but for me, it is 2 things. One, very large workloads, if you stuff them all together, broken out into more digestible chunks. So ingest, transformation, et cetera, is one obvious one, but also serving user-facing applications that have to be sharded by users or cells in deployments or different companies because compliance reasons. So that is kind of what I've centered around.
So that's completely wrong. So anyway, what small data actually is for me, having been through a few different eras of this stuff, is in the big data era, we didn't care about individual computers. Like an individual machine didn't matter because you had several thousand of them doing whatever it is you were doing. So no one cared about any individual machine. And for me, small data is like a reawakening, kind of in a great awakening sort of sense, of the fact that our laptops are really, really good. They're really powerful. We can use them for stuff. And I was telling the panelists, I feel a little bad being here because I'm literally running a 60 terabyte Spark pipeline right now. I'm like a token representative from big data here at the small data conference. But the unifying thing for me with doing big data, doing AI stuff, is that we once again care about the power of an individual machine. When you only have 256 H100s, every one of them is precious, right? They all matter. They're all sort of part of the job. They're all part of the workflow. And that for me is sort of the key differentiator. We care about individual machines. We are excited about the potential, and we are writing software in a way where we're optimizing the potential of a single machine. We're not just focused on lots and lots of dumb individual machines anymore. That's what it is for me.
Selena, what do you think about it? It's I know you kind of also work around with data teams. I'm kind of curious to learn about what your thoughts are when it comes to small data. I know you've worked for big data companies out there. So kind of curious to learn more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for big enterprise companies like American Express, which, I mean, their P&L is trillions of dollars, right? Getting outside of, I think we've been talking a lot about tooling and technology. When I think about small versus big data, what it comes down to is even if you're working in chunks of data, as we're talking about, it's really about what the data finds most valuable, right? I think small data, to me, equates to that hot data, right? I think one of the earlier speakers spoke about hot versus cold data. I think small data is really what's hot data, right? I mean, I know we heard the term data scientists are sexy and whatnot, but it's really what that layer of data that you're actually using and working with to drive business value. Because if you're not driving business value, I would worry about your job safety, right? So when I think about small data, to me, it equates to hot data and what's the data that's actually driving business decisions, not what's sitting in storage.
Right. Jake?
Yeah.
So, James.
Yeah.
There are too many J's.
We got Jake, we got James, we got Josh. So, yeah, I mean, we can quote Jordan from earlier today, right? Or, do I have to do a shuffle? There's that. There's the pets versus cattle argument.
Pets versus cattle, sure.
Yeah. So I agree with Selena on, hey, you got to actually do something useful with it. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So, we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah. No, I think that kind of makes a lot of sense in terms of what you all are kind of talking about. I'm kind of also curious to learn a little about, when we talk about small data or big data, it's also about the right sizing data infrastructure investments, right? That kind of goes into the business. So how can businesses identify the right amount of data they need to make impactful decisions without falling into the trap of over-engineering, which is one big problem at a lot of data enterprises out there? So curious to learn your thoughts. Selena?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I go first, then you're going to go and disagree, right, Josh?
I'm going to totally disagree with whatever you say.
Great,
Yeah.
because get ready for this one.
Okay, good. Give me a hard one.
I think that right size is, in my mind, it's about strategic planning. And I know that people hate the word strategic, but I really do think, having been head of data 3 times and having worked in a big enterprise setting as well as at its startups, and now serving clients across the spectrum, it's really aligning on what are you trying to answer, right? It's cool and all that you get to go and play with these tools and you have a lot of data to work with, but what's really important is at your organizations and the companies you're at today, do you know what's actually driving the business? Do you know how you're actually making money or what the top costs for your business are? And how that ladders to the data that you're working with, right? I think that's how you right-size your data infrastructure investment, because you have to think about, well, what's your impact and how is it tied back to your business's P&L, and how your company makes money and also loses money, right? The cost side of things. And then go into the lens of what should I be investing in? How should I think about my data structure? What's actually important here? Because no one's going to give you a gold star for developing something on the side that doesn't really matter.
It's a challenge, but I think I can take this one. So I work in an AI startup, so the laws of economics do not apply to me at all in any way, shape, or form. Making money, impact of things, ridiculous stuff to care about. Totally doesn't matter. I think the trap of over-engineering, that's actually a fun one. I think there's something like, something like very American about the big data effort. Like everything Americans do is like, we're going to be the biggest thing in the world. This is going to be the to-do app to dominate all other to-do apps. This is what we do here. This is what we're about. We are world-changing always. We are ambitious always in all the things we do. And that is sort of the core of the big data ethos. It's like that conversation, like that meme with the rest of development when it's like Lindsay and Tobias and they're sitting on the bed. And like Lindsay's like, but did those people need Snowflake? And Tobias is like, no, they didn't need it at all. These people somehow delude themselves into thinking, but we might need Snowflake. I thought that would have been funnier. No, not really? Okay, that's fine. That's all right. That's like, it's sort of the potential. Like, what if, right? I think for me, like engineering systems, like I used to work at a climate tech company doing managed charging for EVs, right? And when you're engineering a system, you look at your current load, and then you plan basically for 10x whatever your load is right now. Like that's it, you plan for 10x, like what if we had 10 times as much data, 10 times as many cars, all that kind of stuff. And you build a system that can handle 10x the load, right? And that's what you do. And I think for me, again, I'm back to my theme of like hardware rules everything around me. The hardware that can handle 10x the load from where you're at now has come down significantly over the last few years. You really don't need that much hardware to handle 10 times whatever it is you're doing now. And that to me is the big unlock here. So again, everything Selena said was totally wrong. I'm embarrassed for her that she said it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, anyway.
Josh, I'll come back to you, but I know Jake can agree to you as well. Let's try.
No, I mean, I could take this in a couple different directions.
Disagree with me. Come on.
Good on it.
I care a lot about money and saving money. And like I find it is very easy, like you can fall into over-engineering, but you can also fall very quickly into like over-provisioning and oversizing for some hypothetical, 10x magical unicorn thing, and that usually doesn't happen. So like a lot of my time of late has been in 2 different directions. Like one, these very large implementations of System X that's highly over-provisioned, and like it's very easy to start pulling workloads out. So in almost all of my cases thus far, it hasn't been about the data, but rather like, hey, if I take this little hammer, that's all that's needed to tap this little nail over here, I can save like a ridiculous amount of cost. I can save a ridiculous amount of complexity, on and on and on. So it's like over provisioning and cost saving. But also, once the toolbox is minimal, it's a lot easier to carry a hammer around than to carry a sledgehammer around or like a jackhammer. And I can take this hammer and go to like FedRAMP moderate or FedRAMP high or IL4 and 5 with the same hammer, and the tool sets don't need to change across like very different data volumes or very different compliance mandates, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been very interesting. So that's kind of my take there.
Those are interesting insights. I'm pretty sure Josh will have a contradictory statement to it, but then we'll move on for now, Josh. James, I have an interesting question for you because I chatted with you earlier and you mentioned you work closely with a lot of enterprises out there. So, and when I think about enterprises, I think about big data, to be honest. So when you think about big data, obviously, that also gets me to a question about quality versus quantity. We often hear more data leads to better insights. But how do you approach ensuring data quality over quantity, especially for enterprise businesses? How does it all work?
Yeah, I think like what we were talking about there is like, what is the quantity that you actually care about, which is your cold versus hot and things like that. So like the data you actually care about for most use cases is from today, yesterday, over the last week or whatever. And so like, defining your problem in terms of like what your actual requirements are and what you try to do. So like, do I need to go look at the last 16 years of data to answer this question? Probably not. I probably just need to look at the last week or hour or day or whatever. And so like, when you're thinking about those problems, like what are your actual requirements, and then like how do you what's your sledgehammer versus hammer that you're bringing to the table, right? And so like for the vast majority of use cases, you can just bring your little hammer or maybe a screwdriver.
Josh, what do you think?
I guess like my question is, what do you do then when you need a sledgehammer? Like what do you, because I mean, sledgehammer problems, they happen, and it's like, I wish that sledgehammers were easier to carry around, but they are, like they're pretty heavyweight, right? So like when a sledgehammer, I don't know. I mean, I'm torn here, obviously, I want to be contrarian, right? But I agree with Jake's point. Like a lot of people are carrying around sledgehammers and they look ridiculous, right? Like they look insane because they're super worried about, the day when like they really need that sledgehammer. But sometimes that happens to people. Sometimes they need that sledgehammer. And then like, I'm kind of like, well, what do you do? What is the plan? What do y'all do when the sledgehammer problem arrives?
You walk over to the shed and you grab the sledgehammer.
But it's like you need to build. But I mean, like the whole joke of the sledgehammer is you need the. I don't know. This is weird. We've gotten this metaphor, but that's okay. Like I need to build the tool shed first, right? I am literally right now, like not literally right now, because I'm on the stage with y'all, but like today, I am provisioning a Kubernetes cluster to run Spark on K8s with Carpenter to do my auto node provisioning and stuff. I have to do a ton of work to make it easy, in some sense, to run these gigantic workloads like that. Like it's not a, the great thing about DuckDB is it's there, it's a hammer, you can carry it with you, it's easy, you can bring it wherever it needs to go. This is like not true for the big data workloads, so I'm still like, what do you do? Like what do you do when these things show up on your door? That's my question.
Josh, I feel like you're handing us a slow pitch softball here.
Am I really? That was
so like if you separate compute from storage and standardize the storage and make it interchangeable across small hammer, medium hammer, and large hammer, you have something pretty powerful.
I was a tabular investor, so I have like some interest here.
It happens to be pretty useful.
I'm so glad to hear that. That makes me really happy. As I feel that's like I get to do like the VC humble brag kind of thing. Like so happy to be a part of the journey. Anyway, yeah. But I mean, that's great. Like that's fantastic, and that was my dream for Tabular. Like when Brian was getting the company going, it was like this is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want people to be locked in anymore. Anyway, yeah, that was fantastic.
Very
this is not controversial enough, right? We got to give us something else. Give us something harder. Yeah.
Selena, anything on the data quality versus quantity?
Yeah, I think I think we can all agree that. Aside from the contrarian stuff, like that more data doesn't always lead to better insights. And an example I have is that the last company that I was head of data at, we were a startup, right? So we were no older than 5-6 years old, right? And we were acquired by Procter & Gamble in 2022. And so what I'm trying to get to is that they acquired us. It was a skincare startup, and we were actually building it with data and tech in mind, which is what made us super attractive to Procter & Gamble. And why is that? Even though Procter & Gamble has been around for a long time, you'll probably have to fact check me of how long they've been around, and they're probably sitting on top of a lot of big data out there. One of the, and I think I can say this, but whatever, one of the things that attracted them to us was that we were able to take our data and draw customer insights from them to drive our growth, right? Like they were sitting on all this big data, but unable to think about this holistically, right? Because of the silo of their data, the way that they were, things were just sitting in storage, and they were unable to get to that layer of active, usable data to drive their businesses. And so when we were acquired and I was at Procter & Gamble, this is a classic marketing problem that still exists today. A lot of people want to know about marketing attribution. Like, how are my leads coming to my, to my website or buying from us, right? And at the time, the company's name was Tula, or is Tula, it's still around today. But at Tula, we had bought an MTA product, and we were searching for an MMM product. And for those of you out there that don't know about MMMs, it's media mix modeling. It would help us understand if you invest in paid media channels, such as Google search, if you're on Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff, how is it driving to not only your D2C website, but to Amazon and to all these retail businesses that we were selling to? And so even though we had 5 to 6 years of data, traditional MMMs out there were like, oh, we need a lot of big data to make sense of this and drive insight to tell you how to invest in your marketing strategy. Whereas there's some new MMM tooling out there that's like, we only need 2 years at most of data. In fact, priors, Bayesian MMM takes into account priors. So even if your company hasn't been around for a long time, or times are moving pretty fast for your business, you can bring in those priors to assess what actually should be brought into the model, right? And so what Procter & Gamble realized was, even though they're sitting on years upon years of data, and they're using big companies out there like Nielsen and whatnot for MMM, they were turning their eyes and heads to us. Because they're like, wait, you don't need this big data to actually have great insights and drive growth at the pace that we were driving Tula at. And so prior to coming to Data Culture, they're like, we'd love for you to stay and do this across our brands, because Procter & Gamble has plenty of brands that are probably sitting in your houses and apartments today, right? And it's only being sold at Walmart or Target, but they want to take that data and harness it, right? And I know there was a joke about unlocking your data, but enterprises love those words of, how do I unlock my data with a smaller set of data versus sitting on all this big data but not doing much with it?
Yeah. No, I think thanks for sharing that use case there. I'm kind of also curious to learn a little about the big question about the tool and technologies, right? So are there any specific tools or approaches that you recommend for businesses aiming to adopt a minimalist, data strategy or the culture? How do they compare to the more enterprise-heavy tools out there and just get there into the market? Josh?
Oh man, tools and technologies. Let's see. I'm biased here. I guess I wrote DBT DuckDB and stuff like that, which I think is at least a few users of DBT DuckDB here. It's been nice to see some of y'all. Thank you so much for using my stuff. DuckDB is great. I would have done things at Slack so much differently had DuckDB existed, because it was kind of a situation where the theme here, and what Jake has done at Okta, we didn't have a big data problem so much as we had a relatively large number of small data problems. And just being able to have the tooling and the architecture that would let us refactor all of this sort of stuff that where big data was literally the only option for working with lots of small data. Right. That now we can just kind of work with lots of small data directly and stuff like that. So I think, it sort of begins and ends with DuckDB for me, and then anything else around that, whatever your own personal preferences is fantastic. But yeah, I could not imagine life without it any more so than I could imagine life without Claude or Cursor or any of the other modern tools I use now for AI stuff. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
Noted. James?
Yeah, I think with this is almost to his point, we have so much more options available to us now. We have interopt between everything because we have separation of storage and compute, Iceberg.
Iceberg's good.
All that other stuff. And so, everything's much more pluggable than it used to be. You used to have to take a tool, and that was the tool you used. You brought that to bear. So if you had a problem that was untenable for, with cheaper tools or whatever, then that was the tool you ended up using for everything because you were, locked into a choice of your overall stack. And now because we have interopt across the query execution layer and the storage format and all that other type of stuff, we are allowing the option to compose our approach to different problems instead of I'm bringing just BigQuery to the table or just Databricks to the table or just Snowflake to the table because they work for these problems that I have to solve, but it's the 1-2% of problems.
Yeah. Jake?
Yeah, I think my perspective here is not necessarily toolset specific, but rather number one, knowing where you want to be and knowing what the goal is and knowing the tools very well and turning the levers to optimize in a direction. Do I want, all of this at the expense of high cost? Then I can have that and I can go this route. But if I want to reduce cost or reduce latency, or I can sacrifice some durability, or on and on and on, I think there's a lot of value in flipping those levers correctly. And an easy example is I have, at work, dozens and dozens of Snowflake instances, and we have to serve 5 metrics on a dashboard that everyone hits when they log in as admin, and keeping an extra small single cluster Snowflake warehouse up to service literally 5 numbers on a dashboard 24/7 is a few $100,000, not an option. So I know that use case, I know the tools, and you can kind of match, mix and match with the understanding that doing that too often or diverging too far is going to increase complexity over the long run. So DuckDB is cool.
It's okay.
there's all kinds of Iceberg is cool, Delta's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
It's more on the
but knowing them.
knowing them kind of makes it more easier, and it
Exactly.
also kind of depends on the use case, I
For
would
sure.
say.
Yep.
Selena?
I mean, I was going to try to be contrarian, but I guess I'll add additional tools from some of the examples of clients that I've been working with now, right?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, Josh, did you have a contrarian thought?
No, I'm actually legitimately curious now.
Oh.
I mean, I'll be contrarian after, but for the moment, I'm very curious.
Love it. Well, the example is I'm currently working with a client who's got thousands of DBT models, right? So if you're sitting in the room today and you're and you just walked into a job, or you're currently sitting at a job where you're dealing with all these models and sitting there going, what the hell is this table doing here? And why do we need this table? And your DAG just looks like worse than Medusa, right? I don't even know if it's a DAG anymore. We were brought in to untangle this web. And to be honest with you, I looked at it and I go, oh, hell no, what did we just walk into? And then when I thought about, data minimalism, small data, how do I make this something smaller? We were working on updating their model to redefine, right, a new metric that they were introducing to the business. Guess what? It took 10 hours and it was still going. We were updating the model and it took 10 hours to test our change. And at that point, I'm like, well, my client's gonna be pissed for 2 reasons, right? The cost and how long it's taking, right? Because if this change doesn't work, we gotta go back to the drawing board and do it over again. And so, I don't know if Tyson's in the room, but shout out to SQL Mesh and Tobico Data. That was a tool that I thought to bring into the mix because I'm like, how do we bring SQL Mesh into the mix where SQL Mesh is free, right? And I was telling my client, I'm like, hey, I know you're running on dbt Cloud right now, but you can use SQL Mesh locally to test this change without having to run through, to rerun all these models to check if it worked or not. And so that's how we were, that's how we're actually going to go test. We haven't done it yet, so maybe I'll have to report back. But that's how we were trying to make a big problem something small and sizable to work with.
Thanks, Selena. We'll follow you for the report back for sure. And kind of also curious to learn a little about the challenges. We've been kind of talking about fine, small data could be the next big thing, but what about the challenges of going minimal? What are some common challenges that you guys have seen already, and y'all are seeing that businesses do face these challenges when they kind of try to scale down their operations, because sometimes it's like very big data working. Now, how do you get it down? There are problems, challenges. What are some challenges? How do we overcome those challenges? Jake?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've seen consistently here is data team. Like once upon a time, you would pre-compute stuff over here. You would pipeline a Redis database out to your application, and it would serve metrics, and it would be very cheap and simple, and on and on. And there's application programming, product engineering over here, and then data teams, which don't really speak that. But also conversely, tell these people that you can put a OLAP database into a process and it will just eliminate pipelines and stuff. Is laughable. So there's a lot of conceptual philosophical challenges that I'm when you can start connecting those dots, it's both challenging, but it's laughable once it starts clicking, because it happens so fast that oh yeah, I don't need all this stuff or this stuff to service a similar outcome. So I think that's consistently my challenge. Telling the architect of the data team that I can do this in process on files in S3 is no, you can't. Okay, sure. And then just going away for a while and being silent until it's just spreading like wildfire. So it's very, yeah.
I see Josh is agreeing there, so he has a point. And
no, I do and I don't. I mean, I do and I don't. I think about what are we going to miss from the big data era when it's gone, is kind of my question. Whenever I'm in an organization and there's a reorg, executives love reorgs, right? Now, literally nothing makes them happier. It makes them feel useful. I'm always curious when you do a reorg, what am I giving up? What is the invisible thing I take for granted that I'm not going to have anymore once this is gone? And I think, I'm not sure, but at least what I feel now, doing AI stuff, is I very much feel when I lose one of my H100s. I feel it, right? In a way that I didn't really ever care in the big data days. I didn't care about losing a node. I lost a node, who cares? The whole system is designed to be resilient to it. I don't even have to think about it. It's not even a factor for me. And I worry as we sort of shrink things down, the stuff that's left becomes much more important. And it failing, how do we kind of preserve the reliability and the sort of indifference to failure that we got used to, I guess. And that's maybe my big question for the small data era. And again, there's good people working on this kind of stuff, and I'm optimistic, but it's my worry. It's what I worry we're going to miss. Yeah.
I really miss batching bolts in Storm. I really.
Oh, I remember Storm. I remember Storm. Sure, exactly. Well, Nathan's got the new thing. If you want to use his new thing, you can do that. If you just you're tired of being happy, I don't know. Do whatever you want. Yeah, anyway. Yeah.
James, what do you think?
I think a lot of times, I'm going to completely change from what they've been talking about, but one of the things that you can do is your engineering complexity versus your cost of your system, right? So if you're running a big batch job because it was easy to write a big batch job, engineering time is very low, relatively speaking. But now you want to get into let's just say DuckDB for whatever reason. Well, maybe the server that you can run it on is smaller than the actual size of the data set. And so now you got to change this batch process into an incremental process. Mm-hmm. By changing that into an incremental process, you made it a more challenging engineering problem. Right. By making it a more challenging engineering problem, you switch to where your complexity is living. Yep. Right? You had your distributed shuffle for your larger scale system, but now you have to incremental model and how to manage the engineering complexity for the smaller scale system.
Love it. Selena?
I think I'll summarize it with 2 points. Challenges of going minimal are very similar to, remember when everyone was watching Marie Kondo, right? You got a lot of clutter, so you got a lot of data you're dealing with. So that's data overload, right? That's equal to all the clutter that's living in your house today. I am guilty. So that's one of the challenges, is how do you even get started on it? And then I think the second part is resource constraint, right? Similar to the Marie Kondo concept, they're calling upon Marie Kondo because you yourself either don't have the time or don't have the capacity to go through that clutter. And I think in our data world, I mean, if I'm as head of data, right, and if you're on a data team today or running a data product, you really want to, do you really want to spend the resource on dealing with decluttering, right? And if you're sitting on a data team, how do you prove that value to someone? It's like dealing with technical debt, right? You know it's there and you hate it, and every time you got to go through your process, you're like, I got to deal with this. But at the same time, it's hard to prove the value of like, why do I have to deal with this right now?
That's right.
I love that analogy, and I'm going to use it to dunk on you now. That's awesome. No, because everyone saw Marie Kondo had kids, right? And now suddenly she's not so into minimalism anymore, right? Because we're all of us are like, people got kids, right? It's like, you're going to be one of those parents who like, we're not going to have too many toys. We're not going to have too many books. Do all the parents here have too many toys? I have too many toys. Does everyone have too many books? I have too many books, right? Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Renee. Yeah.
He's nodding along, but I'm like, okay, eventually you come back to, let's put these in boxes,
right,
and let's get this organized again.
But I do the same. But I mean, like, I feel like I do the same thing. Like, I go to a new company and I'm like, okay, this time I'm going to do it differently. This time I'm going to be minimalist, right? But then I get more and more. Like, one of the jokes we had at Slack was that like you could basically predict our AWS costs perfectly based on how many engineers we hired. It was the single best predictor of how much money we would spend on AWS. The customers, blah, blah, blah. How many engineers do you have? That's how much money you're going to spend on AWS, right? How many little side projects and ideas people have and they want to try and all that kind of thing. So how many times do you like incur some technical debt or let them go off and do some compute because it makes them happy and they won't bother you anymore and that kind of stuff. It's like, it's the same sort of truth in some ways.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say on the Marie Kondo thing is...
No, we should go hard on this.
We should like the whole famous line of like, what sparks joy? Like, does this spark joy, right? I'm not saying that you should go to your CEO and say, this data project doesn't spark joy and therefore we should toss it out.
Maybe you should, though. That's, I don't know.
What I'm saying about spark joy is it's analogous to, is it actually important to the business, right, or the organization, or the product you're building?
No one in the data world uses the word spark and joy in the same sentence, seriously. Like, literally no one. Like, I run Spark jobs all day. It does not spark joy in me in any way. It's what I happen to be good at. It's my one useful skill, but man, it does not make me happy.
I feel like you just found everybody's joy right there. They're like, oh, finally somebody said this.
It was sort of the subtext of the whole context. I'm just the guy who says things out loud because I can. Anyway.
All right, this is good discussion. We'll keep the discussion going during the drinks as well after this. But one last question for all of you here, and I'll just need like one sentence for it, and that's about where do you see, I know it's going to be not one sentence, but then you all can try. Where do you see small data going in the next 1 to 2 years, I guess? Josh, we'll start from you real quick.
That's a great question. I mean, it would be amazing if it could dethrone the AI hype cycle. Like that would be super cool. I don't see exactly how that happens, though. Like, really? Like, you know what I mean? I mean, hopefully, I suspect small data will land somewhere between AI and crypto on the hype cycle. That's a fairly safe prediction. Yeah, I'll say that.
You'd say next 20 years, we're going to listen about small data? No?
Like, what do you mean? I don't understand.
Like, small data will be spoken for the next 20 years if we get that hype?
Well, I mean, the joke at Google was like, Google didn't call data, Google had a word for big data, right? Eventually, we will have a word for small data, data. That's it. Like, it's done. We don't think about it anymore. That's always my hope. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
James?
Yeah. The goalpost moves every year, right? So we're just going to move the goalpost, and then 10 years from now, it'll be wherever the goalpost is based on the hardware we got.
Yeah.
Awesome. Selena?
I would say in 1 to 2 years, I think that small data is still going to stay in this niche space, right? Because, I mean, think about how long it took for us to adopt the term big data. It wasn't until probably like Harvard Business Review made it a big thing, and then executives who don't know anything about data they're now saying, I need a data scientist to deal with my big data. Okay, maybe in 5 to 10 years, who knows? But that's my take.
Jake?
I think it'll be very similar to SQLite, literally everywhere.
Ooh, I hope so. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Go.
that's the panel for you guys. Thank you very much to all the panelists here, for everyone attending this session.